Ramunachira Vanachari Jaya Raya Madhava Kunja Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, you should first offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, unto Nara Narayan Rishi, supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto, chapter 26, King Puranjana goes to the forest to hunt. Text number 11, translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Tatakshutrit parishranto Nivrito griham ehivan Kritasnano chitahara Sambhivesha gataklamaha Tatakshutrit parishranto Nivrito griham ehivan Kritasnano chitahara Sambhivesha gataklamaha Tatakshutrit parishranto Nivrito griham ehivan Kritasnano chitahara Sambhivesha gataklamaha
Tatakshutrit parishranto Nivrito griham ehivan Kritasnano chitahara Sambhivesha gataklamaha
Tatakshutrit parishranto Nivrito griham ehivan Kritasnano chitahara Sambhivesha gataklamaha
Tatakshutrit
Parishranto Nivrito griham ehivan Kritasnano chitahara Sambhivesha gataklamaha. Word meanings. Sata, thereafter. Shut, by hunger. Trit, thirst. Parishrantaha, being too fatigued. Nivritaha, having ceased. Griham eyivan, came back to his home. Krita, taken. Snana, bath. Uchita ahara, exactly required foodstuffs. Sambhivesha, took rest. Gataklamaha, freed from all fatigue. Translation. After this, the king, very much fatigued, hungry, and thirsty, returned to his royal palace. After returning, he took a bath and had an appropriate dinner. Then he took rest and thus became freed from all restlessness. Purport. A materialistic person works throughout the whole week very, very hard. He is always asking, where is money? Where is money? Then at the end of the week, he wants to retire from these activities and go to some secluded place to rest. King Paranjana returned to his home because he was very much fatigued from hunting animals in the forest. In this way, his conscience came to stop him from committing further sinful activities and make him return home. In Bhagavad Gita, materialistic persons are described as duskritina, which indicates those who are always engaged in sinful activities. When a person comes to his senses and understands how he is engaging in sinful activities, he returns to his conscience, which is herein figuratively described as the palace. Generally, a materialistic person is infected by the material modes of passion and ignorance. The results of passion and ignorance are lust and greed. In the life of a materialist, activity means working in lust and greed. However, when he comes to his senses, he wants to retire. According to Vedic civilization, such retirement is positively recommended, and this portion of life is called vanaprastha. Retirement is absolutely necessary for a materialist who wants to become free from the activities of a sinful life. King Paranjana's coming home, taking bath, and having an appropriate dinner indicate that a materialistic person must retire from sinful activities and become purified by accepting a spiritual master and hearing from him about the values of life. If one would do this, he would feel completely refreshed, just as one feels after taking a bath. After receiving initiation from a bona fide spiritual master, one must abandon all kinds of sinful activities, namely illicit sex, intoxication, gambling, and meat eating. The word uchitahara used in this verse is important. Uchita means appropriate. One must eat appropriately and not take after food, as hogs take after stool. For a human being, there are eatables described in Bhagavad Gita as sattvika ara, or food in the mode of goodness. One should not indulge in eating food in the modes of passion and ignorance. This is called uchitahara, or appropriate eating. One who is always eating meat or drinking liquor, which is eating and drinking in passion and ignorance, must give these things up so that his real consciousness may be awakened. In this way, one may become peaceful and refreshed. If one is restless or fatigued, one cannot understand the science of God. As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, evam prasana manaso bhagavad bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vijnanam mukta sangasya jayate. Unless one can become free from the influence of passion and ignorance, he cannot be pacified. And without being pacified, one cannot understand the science of God. King Paranjana's returning home is indicative of man's returning to his original consciousness known as Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is absolutely necessary for one who has committed a lot of sinful activities, especially killing animals or hunting in the forest. Om Jnanatimarandasya Gyananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Panchakalpa Turubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. In the preface of the Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada talks about Bhoga Tyag. So the Paranjana here is working hard, hunting, and then he's tired and he's coming home. So Prabhupada describes, this is a short couple sentences, mundane workers labor very hard day and night in order to relish a certain kind of rasa. Rasa means a mellow or relationship. That rasa, mundane rasa, is understood as sense gratification. The relish or taste of the mundane rasa does not long endure, and therefore mundane workers are always apt to change their position of enjoyment. So in Minnesota, the bulk of the population lives in Minneapolis. It's a large city. There's lots of smaller towns north. And it's called the land of 10,000 lakes. So everybody and his grandma has got a cabin on the lake that they go to. They work hard all week long. And in the weekend, it's all about, are you going north this weekend? Because Minneapolis is the southern part of the state. So it's just so funny. It's a culture, of, the weekend, we're going north, going to the cabin on the lake. And everyone probably said, we want some relief from the hard work. But then after, a weekend at the cabin, people, they get restless, and I'm going to come back and, get back into my regular routine. So it's called Chapala-sukha, flickering happiness. It does, the Prabhupada said, does not long endure. So anyhow, that was just something I thought was funny because, it really is, it's like a whole consciousness in Minneapolis. It's just like, going north for the weekend, it's just kind of funny. So Prabhupada talks about conscience, and a dictionary definition of conscience is an inner feeling or voice viewed as acting as a guide to the rightness or wrongness of one's behavior. And in our terms, we'd say that's the super soul giving. And Prabhupada was asked a question by Rupanuga. He asked, and I'm not sure if Prabhupada was thinking that he was asking, is consciousness the symptom of the super soul? But Prabhupada is, in reply to your question, is the conscience the symptom of the super soul? So Prabhupada's short reply here is, yes, we have got all the qualities of the super soul. We are the samples. Therefore, the origin must have all the qualities we have. There is no such thing as acceptance or rejection by the mind of the super soul. This is pretty cool. Our mind in the present material existence is a nonsense. Its business is simply to accept or reject. The super soul has no separate mind like that, but he has got mind also. And whatever he thinks in his mind also, that is a fact. There is no question of accepting or rejecting. In Sanskrit language, it is called Satya Sankalpa, and our mind is Vikalpa. The mind, body, and the super soul is the same absolute truth. There is no distinction between them. This is the answer to your question. Is the conscience the symptom of the super soul? And then another little note, Chaitanya Charandas describes about conscience. He says, the Bhagavad Gita 15:15 states that Krishna is the source of knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. As conscience is usually the subconscious recollection of the right choice based on our prior knowledge, we can infer that conscience ultimately comes from Krishna. Kind of interesting. So, in the purport, Prabhupada talks twice when Puranjana came to his senses. Pretty common expression, and there's two different meanings I looked up. Come to your senses. First one is to regain consciousness. Here's an example. I must have fainted because when I came to my senses, I was in a ditch. And it also means, which is probably what we think of more, is to start to think and behave reasonably after a period of foolishness or irrationality. An example is Phil finally came to his senses and admitted he needed help with his drinking problem. I just thought it was interesting that Prabhupada used that twice. Puranjana came to his senses and realized, this is a dead end street, engaging in sinful activity. So, and Prabhupada talks about so much of this really is emphasizing sattva, gun, the mode of goodness, when one is bound up by the lower modes of nature, passion and ignorance, our consciousness it's really next to impossible to be aware, to be Krishna conscious, because we're not even conscious on the material level. I don't know if Prabhupada actually said this, but it's circulated around ISKCON for years. First, you have to become conscious, then you can become Krishna conscious. I've never actually read that specifically. Prabhupada said that, but it has been circulated for many years. So it makes sense that unless you come to the mode of goodness, and that's Brahmabhuta, Prasanatma, Nasocati, Nakangsati. Samasaveshu Bhuteshu Madbhakte Labhate Param. Krishna says that the stage of Brahmabhuta, realizing Brahman, which is, ultimately it's the Sudasattva stage, but at least the material goodness, you have some glimpse of that. You're seeing people, Samasaveshu Bhuteshu, you see everyone equally. And there's no Nasochati, Nakangsati, there's no hankering or lamentation. So hankering is symptomatic of the mode of passion. I'm hankering for something. I'm not satisfied. I need something more. And lamenting is indicative of the mode of ignorance. I'm lamenting I lost something that I used to have, or I'm lamenting that whatever I did didn't turn out to be what I thought it would be. So this is this vacillating back and forth between hankering and lamenting. And Sattva Gun is, even though it's still under the cloud, you could say, of material consciousness, at least you're above this hankering and lamenting. There's a relative peacefulness. There's a satisfaction in the mode of goodness. So your consciousness is, what did Prabhupada said is, unless one's pacified, the last paragraph, he said, unless one becomes free from the influence of passion and ignorance, he cannot be pacified. And pacified means to quell the anger, agitation, or excitement of. And quell, it's like if you want to put down a rebellion, let's quell the rebellion. Let's quell so these, and unless we can, and in our less developed stage of Krishna consciousness, Krishna advises that we have to tolerate the duality of material existence, whereas someone who's Krishna consciousness is above the duality, and they see everything's connected to Krishna, so there's no duality. There's two types of duality. There's the duality of like happiness, distress, pain and pleasure, honor, dishonor. There's another type of duality, which is we see things separate from Krishna, when in actuality, there's nothing separate from Krishna. Even the material energy, Krishna says, is my divine energy. Everything's coming from me. So there's, to be conscious of Krishna means to be conscious that everything is connected to Krishna. And then Prabhupada said that position, when we might normally refrain from something that we like to do, but we know that Krishna doesn't like that, so we will refrain from it. We might normally like to do it on the material platform. And then vice versa, something that we normally might not like to do, we will do it because it's pleasing to Krishna. So the freedom from duality, Prabhupada said, that means you're free from duality. You're only concerned with satisfying Krishna. And it doesn't matter if it's comfortable or not comfortable, or it's desirable or undesirable. It really has it doesn't play into the decision-making of whether or not I should do this or not do this. It's like, if it's pleasing to Krishna, and then how do we get that? We get that from the spiritual master and his representatives and Shastra. We understand what's pleasing to Krishna. And then on a more elevated platform, when one is mature in Krishna consciousness, then you get direct dictation from the super soul. Okay, let's see here. Prabhupada talks about the eating. He says this appropriate And again, he talks about the sattva gun, eating foods in the mode of goodness. And foods in the mode of goodness, anybody remember some of the symptoms of foods in the mode of goodness? Go ahead and chime in.
Sweet, juicy, like giving.
Fatty, yeah. And how about the mode of passion? What are foods in the mode of passion? Pungent. And mode of ignorance, it's decomposed 4 hours before, I think Prabhupada says, yeah. So, but then Prabhupada talks about, but prasadam is transcendental, even it can never be contaminated. Therefore, even if it's thrown on the ground, like he was talking about, I think Govardhan Puja, when they're throwing the prasadam, that devotees will pick it up. And apparently in Jagannath Puri, there, it's such a, Tsunami, you've been to Jagannath Puri, yeah? Apparently, the Jagannath Prasad, it's the bomb, and it's so, apparently, and Gaur Govinda Maharaj, because he's from Orissa, that part of the culture is that you don't even wash your mouth after eating because you don't want to lose any of the crumbs of Jagannath Prasad, so not on that level.
It says that Lakshmi Devi herself cooks.
And just see how, sattva gun, one thing, but prasadam, the power of prasadam, now, we're pumping out the prasad for, or always, but the gem show, it's mega prasad pump out time. And how much importance Prabhupada put on prasadam distribution. And there was one lecture where Prabhupada was in a very lighthearted mood. He was asking all the devotees, he said something like, I think most of my disciples have come because of prasadam. And then he was going around the audience asking, the different devotees, and everybody was sort of sheepishly going, yeah, you got me, So tongue is the most voracious and difficult to control. So Prabhupada was well aware of that. And just like the hook, they put bait on the hook, to attract the fish. So Prabhupada hooked us with prasadam. He put the bait, prasadam, and people a higher taste. I mean, that's the whole thing. Vishaya vinivartan rasovarjam rasopyasya param drisvani vartate. Without the higher taste, you can't give up the lower taste. So Krishna consciousness is about positive renunciation, not dry renunciation. Prabhupada would often say that, dry renunciation. And he talks about the Mayavadis not being able to relish, prasadam, because they're thinking, we have to deny the senses. This detachment, this callousness to any type of enjoyment. But, Krishna consciousness is real enjoyment. There was one reporter that asked Prabhupada, what is the meaning of Krishna consciousness, or what is the purpose of Krishna consciousness? And Prabhupada said, what is the purpose of life? And Prabhupada said, the purpose of life is to enjoy. And we're always talking about, material enjoyment. It's the kryptonite, for a devotee. But it's real enjoyment is enjoying Krishna's prasadam in all the different varieties, not just the food stuff, but in the Bhagavad Gita 7:19, Bahunam Jamanamante verse, in the purport, Prabhupada talks about a surrendered devotee. They realize that Krishna's mercy is everything. Everything is Krishna's mercy. There's that story, that king, he was out, he had a minister, I don't remember his name. He had a minister who, was his advisor. And the minister was always saying, everything is Krishna's mercy. Everything is Krishna's mercy. And so they were out, the king was out on some hunting expedition, sometimes the Kshatriyas would fight to hone their skills, not just to maliciously kill animals, but they had to, sometimes they would protect the sages from tigers and things like that. And then they would have their, like boxers, they have to spar to keep in shape, for the fight. So Kshatriyas, they have to keep in shape so that when there's an actual war, they've got their, their skills honed. So the king was out on a hunting expedition, and there was an accident with his bow, and he sliced off his thumb. And the minister said, "Everything is Krishna's mercy." And he was like, "What? Insult me?" But, so how is that Krishna? So when they came back, he threw the minister in jail. Everything is Krishna's mercy. He said, "Now, how you like that? You're in jail now." And he said, "Everything is Krishna's mercy. Being in jail is Krishna's mercy." Then apparently the king was out again, out in the forest, and some cannibals captured him. And they were going to offer him up as a sacrifice to goddess Kali. And so then they were preparing for the sacrifice, and apparently a proper sacrifice has to be an intact human. So then they noticed his thumb was gone. Says, "Can't use you for sacrifice." So they let him go. So then the king, when he returned to the kingdom, and he told the minister about what had happened, and he said, "Yeah, it actually was Krishna's mercy that I had my thumb cut. You're right. But how is it that Krishna's mercy that you're in jail, and had to suffer?" He said, "Well, if I was with you, I would have been the next choice for the cannibal sacrifice." So everything is Krishna's mercy. So that's a nice meditation that that we can be grateful, that everything is, whatever, everything is a gift. There's one lecture, this Franciscan monk, Richard Rohr, it was titled "Everything is a Gift." And when we're in that state of consciousness, it really sort of opens up the whole spectrum of Krishna consciousness. Not just like, say, we're in the temple and we're appreciated, but everywhere, like the whole world, in a sense, is a temple. Everything is Krishna's mercy, and we see Krishna manifest in the manifestations of the material world, and even beyond that, we see Krishna as the super soul within everyone's heart, and we're offering respects to all living entities. And it's a nice meditation when Prabhupada said that the Lord is like a diamond, and the devotee is like a golden ring. They're both beautiful on their own, but they're more beautiful when they're together. So I just think it's a nice meditation, like everybody's got like this diamond ring, the Lord and the living entity in the heart. So it's a very beautiful thing. Every living being is Krishna's dear part and parcel. So nice meditation. So going on with the idea of the modes of nature infecting us, Kapila Dev talks about devotional service that's infected with the modes of nature. We can be externally engaging in devotional service, so it'd be like, "Oh, I'm above the modes of nature. I'm engaging in devotional service." But Lord Kapila Dev talks about how we can be infected, because it's more about the consciousness. It's not necessarily the external activity that we're doing, but it's the consciousness that we have while we're doing the activity, which is the most important element. So there's a series of 3 or 4 verses where Lord Kapila says, so it's sort of like, if you're feeling sick, what do? You go online and you look up what are the symptoms, of any given, disease, and you try to match up. So Kapila Dev gives, here are the symptoms that our consciousness is infected within devotional service by the modes of nature. So the first one is the mode of ignorance. Devotional service executed by a person who is envious, proud, violent, and angry and who is a separatist is considered to be in the mode of darkness. So in the purport, Prabhupada says, one who approaches the Supreme Lord to render devotional service, but who is proud of his personality, envious of others, or vengeful, is in the mode of anger. He thinks that he is the best devotee. Devotional service executed in this way is not pure. It is mixed and is of the lowest grade, tamasa. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur advises that a Vaishnava who is not of good character should be avoided. And I take that more to be intimate association. I mean, like, I'm not going to the kirtan. There's that puffed up, intimate association where you're revealing your mind in confidence, inquiring confidentially. You're going to hear probably Vaishnava aparad, and you don't want to be around that, but it's one thing to be in a kirtan. So the next is the mode of passion. The worship of deities in the temple by a separatist with a motive for material enjoyment, fame, and opulence is devotion in the mode of passion. So in the purport, Prabhupada says the word separatist must be understood carefully. The Sanskrit words in this connection are Benedrik and Pritak Bhava. A separatist is one who sees his interest as separate from that of the Supreme Lord. Mixed devotees or devotees in the modes of passion and ignorance think that the interest of the Supreme Lord is supplying the orders of the devotee. Give me this, give me that. And if I don't get it, thanks a lot, Krishna. What kind of God are you? I've been trying to serve you and you're not giving me what I want. It's transactional. That Prahlad Maharaj condemns that type of businessman, mercantile mentality. The interest of such devotees is to draw from the Lord as much as possible for their sense gratification. This is the separatist mentality. And in the different tiers of, well, I would say different tiers, but in the 6 symptoms of surrender that Rupa Goswami delineates in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bhakti Vinod Maharaj was referencing, I don't know the Acharya, but one of the Acharyas about the first 2 are to accept things that are favorable and reject things that are unfavorable. And he said that's surrender on the level of the mind, because the mind is this acceptance and rejection. So higher than that is to the level of the intelligence is to accept Krishna as one's protector and one's maintainer. And the deepest level is surrender on the level of the false ego, to have no separate interest from the interest of the Lord and to always feel oneself meek and humble. There are different, again, there's, Krishna consciousness is such an exacting science, really, you can really dive deep and to understand the subtleties of, we're talking about surrender. So these are the different levels of surrender that this Acharya, that Bhakti Vinod Maharaj had brought out. I thought that was interesting. So finally, devotional service in the mode of goodness. When a devotee worships the Supreme Personality of Godhead and offers the results of his activities in order to free himself from the inebrities of fruitive activities, his devotion is in the mode of goodness. So Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about varnashram. That's the beginning of human life, Prabhupada said, is following varnashram. But there still could be this selfish motive. I want to be free from the reaction to my fruitive activities. Let's see. And then finally, pure devotional service. The manifestation of unadulterated devotional service is exhibited when one's mind is at once attracted to hearing the transcendental name and qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is residing in everyone's heart. Just as the water of the Ganges flows naturally down towards the ocean, such devotional ecstasy, uninterrupted by any material condition, flows toward the Supreme Lord. And in Prabhupada's purport, he says the word ahoitiki means without reason. A pure devotee does not render loving service to the personality of Godhead for any cause or for any benefit, material or spiritual. And devotees are not even interested in liberation. It's considered to be, and that would be, the peace. One time Prabhupada was speaking, he said, we're not interested in the so-called peace. This is like the mode of goodness. You want peace, so merging into the Brahman is, okay, peaceful, no more distress. So, the transcendental anxiety, having to organize outreach, that anxiety is actually transcendental. And Mother Yasoda's anxiety over, is Krishna going to, hurt himself, or he's being captured by Kaliya, and all the residents of Vrindavan are completely in anxiety. They're practically going to leave their bodies, But that type of anxiety brings one more intensely absorbed in thinking of Krishna. So that anxiety is desirable. But, and the so-called peace of merging into, the Brahman effulgence or Sattva Gun type, that's, again, Prabhupada's wonderful way of really making a point. We're not interested in the so-called peace. So, any comments or questions or reflections? Yes, Lolita.
You were talking about prasadam and how important it is. And I think last week when I was working in the restaurant, this devotee that we don't really see him much. In fact, I only ever see him come to the restaurant maybe like a few times a year. But I said, oh, did you enjoy your lunch or whatever? And he said, oh, well, I tried to not, he's like, I want to get more of whatever, but I don't want to, I'm enjoying it too much, and I shouldn't enjoy it because it's Krishna's to enjoy. And I just remember being kind of confused by that. So I was wondering what do you have to say about that kind of mentality? Like, should we be enjoying prasadam?
I think we should be definitely enjoying prasadam and appreciating and grateful and how wonderful Krishna's appeared. But Prabhupada, I think it's Prabhu Goswami, he describes it. We have to be careful. You can cross a line of appropriately. We're supposed to honor prasadam, not overindulge. Eating more than necessary is a cause of downfall, he says, atyahara. So we should enjoy it, but we shouldn't overdo it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just so confused because he said he was trying so hard to not enjoy it, and it just seems strange to me.
Yeah, it's kind of impersonal to deny the taste of, it's Krishna's mercy. It's like you should honor it and relish. That's real enjoyment, is to enjoy the prasadam of the Lord, the mercy of the Lord, and that's bona fide. And of course, in the beginning, Prabhupada, he says you should eat so much you waddle like a duck. So it's so funny. Like new bhaktas, you see them when they come. Sometimes, they just balloon up. They're just like halava and this, and within a couple months, they gain about, whatever, 15 or 20 pounds, and you think, yeah, it's okay. But then later on, you see they usually tame it down. Yes, Prabhu.
So you're
Thank
saying
you for the question.
how prasadam can never be contaminated, but there's the instance in when Prabhupada was in South Africa, I don't know the exact year, but it's in the 70s. But at the temple, there was not facility for him to stay, so he was staying in an apartment a couple blocks away. And as he was leaving the temple to go to his apartment, he had a big plate of Mahaprasad. And as they were getting into the car, somehow the devotee dropped it, and it ended up upside down on the floor of the car in the back seat. And they were saying, oh, Prabhupada, we're so sorry, we'll go get you a new plate. And he said, no, that's not necessary. So he just flipped the plate over, scooped it all out on the floor back onto the plate. And they said Prabhupada ate the entire plate when he got back to his apartment after being flipped on the floor. So that's definitely uncontaminated.
There is a caveat though. Devotees were, when they were just serving prasadam up for the Sunday feast, and sometimes guests were leaving some of the remnants on the plates, and devotees were eating that prasadam. Prabhupada said no. It's because of the materialistic consciousness that, it's sort of like lips, milk touched by the lips of the serpent causes poisonous effect, or like the holy name. If you hear the holy name being chanted by someone with material consciousness, it can infect us, So there is, maybe it's just the subtleties of things. Yes, prasadam is always pure, but we're getting both. We're getting the infection. You could say it's not that there's no benefit, but along with the benefit, you're getting the infection. So Prabhupada, he said, don't do that. So, how about you, Chris? Any thoughts to share? You always got something profound. Ganga Prema, let's hear it. Something, some realization. How about the ladies? Anything from the ladies? Okay, you're on the spot. Ganga Prema, let's hear something. Something that you heard that resonated with you.
I guess, just really thinking about how the different modes within the food are. It's easy to overlook, and it's easy to start doing those things on your own, whether it's over salting or making something too pungent or making something too spicy, any of those things, and just starting to kind of put it into more of a passionate mode. We don't really make it so much in the mode of ignorance with prasadam when we cook it, but it's easy to get it into the mode of passion. But I guess just focusing on how that's a possibility.
Yeah. All right, thank you very much. Grantharaj Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Panchakalpa Tarubhishta Kripa Sindhu Vyevata Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha.